Today on KFUG Community Square, I'm privileged to hold the microphone for Reverend Dana Gill with the United Methodist Church here in Crescent City. So we have known each other for a little bit here. I think we met through True North when we were both employees. You still currently are associated?
Yep.
Okay. And then you have been my spiritual advisor now for, 2-3 years?
Yeah, I maybe.
Yeah.
Time flies. Who knows?
Okay. Quite a bit of time. So why are we holding the microphone for you today, Reverend Gill?
Oh, because you asked me to. I don't know.
That's true. This is our inaugural episode of
Really?
Community Square. You are our first guest.
Wow, I feel so privileged. Thank you. I feel like we should be drinking some bubbles or something right now.
Well, how about just coffee?
That works too. It's a little early for bubbles.
That is true. But we did have breakfast. So what is it that what is it all that you do with the Methodist Church and True North, and how does that cross over? Like you're the minister, but you're still a True North employee.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the answer to that one, but
So, in the United Methodist tradition, I am employed by the larger denomination, which is technically, we're broken up into conferences. And so we're the California-Nevada Conference.
okay.
So it's Northern California, Northern Nevada. And the church basically loans me out. I know that sounds weird, but
It does.
And that's not how my bishop would probably describe it, but that's my interpretation. Like, they basically loan me out to the local church. So most clergy are appointed. That's what we call it, appointed to the local church. My church can only afford quarter-time clergy.
Okay.
So I only work there 10 hours a week. But because I'm an elder in full connection, that's the fancy title, I'm guaranteed a full-time appointment. It's basically like being a tenured professor in a university where you're guaranteed a job, right?
Okay.
And so my bishop, because I requested it and I was able to prove that it was the values of True North were in alignment with the values of the Methodist Church, they appointed me to what they call extension ministry. So I am representing the United Methodist Church in my work at True North.
Okay. And your work at True North, when I first met you, was around economic development. And then I am on the Housing LOC. So that's local organizing committee, correct?
Yep.
So the Housing LOC to address not just homelessness, but low income housing and the need for more housing here.
Right. Yeah.
So that's your ministry, is to assist with people in the community. So that's serving the poor.
Right. Yeah, it's economic development, and when we say economic development, at least with True North, it's going to be those people who are traditionally left out of climbing the socioeconomic ladder, but also helping the poor to find housing so that they can pull themselves up by their bootstraps, if you believe in that phrase.
Not a thing.
No, I know. That was tongue in cheek to anyone who doesn't know me and my dry sarcasm. Yeah, so we work to help create more housing here in Del Norte County. When we first started, there was no emergency shelter. Our Daily Bread Ministries was the closest thing we had to a shelter, and it wasn't regular.
No, it was not.
No. So I wouldn't even call it a shelter. They were doing their best, I think.
Oh, yeah. But you have to have a lot of things in place legally to be a shelter and to do overnight, do the whole thing.
And so now we finally have a shelter we're starting to talk about our ribbon cutting date and our open house date finally.
So is there a date for that?
I haven't gotten an email announcing a date yet, but at the last meeting we have a meeting every other Monday to check in on the project. And we started to discuss dates for the open house. So we're getting there. We're getting closer.
Yeah. Right. Like all building things or home remodels or any of that other stuff, there's unforeseen snags. And then because this is a shelter and it's not just an overnight warming center kind of a thing, there is more rules, regulations, and the whole thing.
Right. Well, and it's gonna be like part of the coordinated entry system, so that the county will be able to pull the data from them and give them the services that they need and work with Del Norte Mission Possible. And then it'll also tie into the micro village, which is transitional housing, where they'll get a lot more supports around this is how you live in community, this is how you take care of a home, and then also the behavioral health support that they will need if they need it, right? Whatever those needs are, we'll be able to surround them with those services at the micro village.
Nice. So, I mean, maybe this is another conversation that we need to have with Renelle from the Health and Human Services here at Del Norte County, and with Daphne Cortez Lambert from Mission Possible, and you to talk about those things. But you touched on something really important, I think, when you said mental health services if they need it, even if they didn't become homeless because they had mental health issues or drug addiction. A lot of our homeless develop not even just drug addiction, but mental health issues. It's a huge trauma.
It's a huge trauma to become homeless.
Even if you're just homeless for a few months, that is psychologically damaging. What kind of mental health services will be there for that support?
That's our county and behavioral health, mental health services. I think that they do their very best. It has been hard to find the appropriate amount of staffing to provide the services that are needed.
That's always an issue here.
It is always an issue, and I'm doing a lot of research right now on what those gaps are, so that we can figure out how to fill those gaps. But it's the biggest barrier to supportive services that individuals with mental health needs have is, well, like, I signed up for services, but the county just doesn't have the capacity to provide it, or sometimes people just don't trust the government, and so they don't engage in the services that are offered.
That makes perfect sense. And then they've been burned, and then they lump it all together. I have been working on going out into the area that we call the swamps.
Oh, wow. Brave.
I do go with somebody who's accompanying me, and I have permission from George Ruth to be there.
That's good. So
we did some podcast style interviews and things out in the swamps.
Wow.
And one of the stories that I heard was that a gentleman who was terminally ill was provided housing in town, so that he could pass away with dignity, right? So that was done for him. And as his health declined, his last thing that he could do for himself is he took himself back to the swamp so he could die with his family.
Wow.
So the homeless people in there took care of him the best that they could with the resources they had, shared everything that they had with him so that he didn't die alone.
Yeah.
That was his choice, was to, we decide death with dignity is to go into town and stay at a hotel or stay in this small apartment with furniture you've never seen, with people you don't know.
Where he felt comfortable.
Yeah, there was no dignity in that to him. And so the last physical thing that he could do for himself is he took himself home to his friends and his family to die with dignity in an area we call the swamps. It was remarkable to me we were talking about human beings. We were talking about people who have friends, who have stories, who have lives, who have hopes, who have dreams.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you talk, I've had the blessing to hear just a fraction of some of their stories and get to know just a very small few who have come out of the swamps or continue to live in the swamps. And man, their stories of community and resilience are incredible. And it's also heartbreaking how much trauma there is and how much hopelessness there also is. Like it's a twofold, right?
It's both.
Yeah.
Both can be true at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that we're getting to a better place in our county because of the work that, Daphne and Darcy are doing at Del Norte Mission Possible. And all of the other support staff. Like they have such a great staff there.
They really do.
And they're doing really good work with everyone. And I think that we are finally creating a space and an avenue for folks to start overcoming those barriers of homelessness and trauma while still maintaining the community connections that are so important for them to continue to do this work, right? Because there
Community
really
connections,
is community.
there is. So you're talking about community connections, not with. So just so people understand, we are called citizens. So if you have a house and you have an apartment or whatever, if you have housing, that our homeless population refers to us as citizens. So when you talk about community, you're not talking about community with the homeless population, with citizens. You're talking about maintaining community within their
with one another,
with the other homeless communities that they have created, sometimes for decades.
right? Well, because that's who their family has been, right?
Yeah.
And some people come out and they're like, nope, I need to not be connected with any of those people anymore. And that's a choice that they make for themselves.
Yeah.
But some people need that community because that is their family.
It is. And these are the, right, from going out there and talking to them, these are the people that have, who have helped them through severe illnesses or injury and brought them water and food day after day for months, taken them to figure out how to get them to physical therapy appointments or doctor's appointments and those types of things, sometimes for well over a year.
Well, I mean, if you talk to, I don't know how much interaction you've had with Darcy, but Darcy, she has so much love for her people.
Absolutely.
And the people and she's told me stories about people who have such a severe infestation of body lice.
Yeah.
And she's just wiping them down and the body lice are falling off, right? But she does it with love and care and compassion, and God,
Darcy is the most amazingly beautiful soul ever.
I don't know that I could do that physically.
Yeah, there's very few people who physically could could do something like that, because we're built for survival and to be disgusted so that we stay away.
Right.
It's like caring for the leper. She's
like Jesus in my mind. I have so much respect for her and so much love for her. She does so much good for the community. Yeah.
She's a beautiful soul. So when you say that and you say she's like Jesus in my mind, when you were talking about that, I think of the archangel that went to the Garden of Gethsemane and held Christ while he bled from every pore in the dust and the dirt of an olive grove, and what that angel must have looked like when he returned back to heaven. And we say no unclean thing can enter the kingdom of heaven, and yet that angel did.
Yeah.
And that's what I think of with Darcy. I think she's the angel that holds Christ.
Yeah. Or even just thinking about when Jesus went and, touched the lepers to heal them, when so many other people were like, no, get them away from me. They've got body lice. And Jesus was like, come here, let me heal you. It's that kind of love and compassion.
She's just a remarkable person. And she's the one that took me to the swamps and introduced me. And so that was why I was able to go and why I am safely able to go and those types of things. And I have been told that I can go out there on my own if she's not available. But I still trust her relationship that she has created over years. And she is beloved. She really is.
She is,
for that reason. And that's right. And that's another interview we could do, is to allow Darcy to come in and tell her story. I do have on this week, and within a few days, I do have an interview with somebody else who works full time and was also homeless. And to have them they're going to share their story. When I originally talked to you, and I guess this would be a good segue about coming in and being our inaugural guest on Community Square, we have talked and not been able to actually connect and to do this since last year about doing a podcast on grief. And thinking we were talking about our homeless population and the things that they go through and the things that they endure, and having such an infestation of body lice that Darcy could wipe it from them, and know what that is about, the mental health around grief of losing your community when you get housing. And again, right, we're not there, the homeless people, and I know that this is going to be a big thing within our community. Even if they have a medical reason and they're giving medical housing, which is to be put up in a hotel or to put into the legacy, or any of those other types of things because of a medical condition or an injury or whatever it is for stabilization, they're not allowed to have guests. And I understand intellectually why that is. You don't want to have 35 other homeless people crammed into a hotel room. You're going to lose the ability to continue to do that. But so when I asked about this during an interview, why they, if they know they're going to lose their housing, why would they do that? And they said, because if it's cold and it's wet and it's raining and somebody knocks on your hotel door and says, can I just take a shower? Can I just warm myself back up and put dry clothes
How
on?
do you say no to that?
You don't say no to that, because that's the person who kept you alive when you were first
Right.
sick before you got the housing. That person, because there's barriers up there. Nobody can drive in water. They have to carry 3 liters of water for themselves every day just to stay alive.
Right.
So then that means you're carrying in 6 liters, 3 for you and 3 for another human being. And if you have a couple of people you're taking care of, you spend the entirety of your day keeping people alive with just water, walking it back and forth. I can't imagine, one, the trauma, and 2, the grief of having to say no, of losing your community, of that disconnection, of all of those things. I don't.
Yeah. Well, and it's such a complicated and compounded grief, right? It's like grief on top of grief on top of grief, when, like, not necessarily for everyone, but like, let's say that you're housed and you suddenly become unhoused. There's trauma and grief there, but then you're suddenly thrown into the swamps where you're having to, jump awake because a twig snaps behind you and you don't know who it is, if they're
Or what
safe,
it is, a bear or
Right.
whatever.
Is it
The popos come in to throw you out. Somebody wants to burn your encampment. You have no idea.
Right. So like there's that trauma and grief on top of the grief that you haven't yet been able to process. Right. And then there's the grief of, losing your connections to citizens and, society that operates in that capacity. Right. It's such a complex and complicated grief process that takes a really long time to untangle. And people have to feel safe to be able to process their grief and their trauma.
And when you're not housed, you're not safe. And just because
Very
somebody
rarely
put
are you safe,
into a
yeah.
house, does that mean you feel safe when you have spent days, weeks, months, years, decades being unsafe and just surviving?
Yeah. I mean, everyone is different, but I would imagine it's not an immediate sense of safety just because you're in a home.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never been chronically homeless like that, but I would imagine it's not an immediate sense. I would imagine that you feel like the ground is about to be pulled out from underneath you at any moment.
Well, yeah, that makes sense to me. It does. But even if you haven't ever been homeless, I mean, we can all put ourselves in the situation of having lost, whether it's a job or a relationship, and understanding what it is to have that kind of a trauma, whether it was abuse or it was abuse within a marriage or a relationship or a family in childhood, or a coworker, a school bully. We all kind of understand what it is to habitually not feel safe at some point in our lives. And the longer that goes on, the more embedded it becomes into us that we are just trying to navigate and survive. We are not living at that point.
Right. Well, and then you're more likely, because you're in this place of survival instead of, thinking with the front part of your brain.
The prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
We get to bring Taryn in to explain that to everybody, because it's a lot of us in town are now getting used to the neurosequential model and how that works.
Because it goes up, right?
Yeah.
If you've read Dr. Bruce Perry, you know that our brains move up. Like, we're not automatically going to be logical.
No, you start in your brainstem.
Yeah, you start with survival, and that can be a really hard thing to overcome.
And you heal from the bottom up as well. So you have to heal and feel the sense of safety and security. And if you don't feel safe, you're never going to be regulated. You are never going to be in control of your emotions, your thoughts, or your actions.
Yeah. Yeah. And it makes it difficult to process grief when you don't feel safe, right? And so then you end up I won't speak in the general royal we. I'll only speak for myself. Again, I've never been chronically unhoused, but I have been unhoused. And it was in San Francisco, where I had access to services, but I was sleeping in my car for like a month, right? And it's that kind of trauma, even relatively minor in my mind, because I still had a car to sleep in. It moved me to make even poorer decisions for myself, right? Like that's when I started making bad choices and trusting people that I shouldn't be trusting. When I started doing drugs and, you know, getting, I would not say that I struggled with addiction, but, you know, I was recreationally using drugs to escape my reality. And that's like, it's just the unfortunate part of it.
Does that count as recreational drugs if you're using it to escape your reality, or does that count as self-medication because you have no idea what to do?
Tomato, tomato.
Well, I look at recreation as like I drank a beer or two after work. I had some friends over. We watched the game or whatever.
Right,
yeah. You know, it was quilting club and we had a couple glasses of wine. But I would look at that drug use. Did you do drugs at all prior to being unhoused or living in your car?
Recreationally.
On occasion?
On occasion, but it was very rare. And then once that happened, it became even more frequent, you know.
To escape your reality.
Yeah, because it was depressing having to live out of my car and not knowing where I would be or if I would have the funds to buy food or if I would have to go to the food pantry and, you know.
Yeah.
As a person of privilege, it was humbling to have to go to the food pantry, I got to tell you.
Wow. So, this is not a conversation we've ever had in this detail. So if you don't want to answer my questions, please set a boundary and say so. You referred to yourself as a person of privilege. Had you disconnected with family and then they weren't there to help? Was it a prideful thing? Was it I'm going to make it on my own because I'm young and that's what I'm going to do kind of a thing? Were you trying to become an actress? I mean, what was the... It's California.
Yeah. It's a complicated answer. I had already gone down the road of distancing myself from my family for better or worse. I had a very authoritarian upbringing. There was a lot of love in my home, albeit some misguided communication around values.
Okay.
Mixed messaging maybe. And I was rebelling in my early 20s from that authoritarian type of control. And I was like, ooh, how do I discover who I am? And I made some really bad choices and had distanced myself from my family. So it was more of a choice because eventually I came back to my family and they were like, why didn't you come and talk to us? And I was like, I didn't feel like I could, right? For a lot of different reasons.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. Sorry if, again, you're welcome to set boundaries with what you want to answer, what you don't want to answer. Was that authoritarian around church?
Yeah.
Was it religious based?
Oh yeah. I was raised very evangelical. I call it the cult of the Christian patriarchy.
Okay.
Because my dad was the head of the household.
I served a mission for the Mormon Church in Columbus, Ohio. Yeah. I am not judging anyway, your family or you in this.
Yeah. I didn't feel any judgment. Don't worry.
Okay.
But yeah, so like I never saw my mom say anything that would counter what my dad said.
Okay.
If my dad didn't want it to happen, it didn't happen.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
So like I don't know.
So really toe the line with the head of the household.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I knew it was weird. Like I knew that it was that my mom felt differently than my dad about a lot of things. Because when my dad was out of town, the rules changed.
Gotcha.
Right. But if my dad was around, he was the head of the household. What he said went. So I really struggled to find my own voice and my own sense of like, this is who I am, because who I was only ever known in relation to what my dad wanted me to be.
Gotcha. And then using that as like, this is God's will and I said it, so therefore it is.
Yeah.
Who you are, what you are, how you think, how you dress,
right.
Where you go.
He's the man, so he knows what God's will is better than I do.
Yeah.
That was in quotes for everyone who can't see me.
Right. But And I love how we pick and choose the scriptures, because it says in Revelations 19:10, and I fell at his feet to worship him. And he said, see thou do it not. For if you have the testimony of Jesus Christ, you have the spirit of prophecy. It doesn't say, and a penis, you have the spirit of prophecy. If you don't have a penis, you don't. It simply says, if you have the testimony of Jesus Christ, you have the spirit of prophecy.
Right.
So he doesn't know more of God's will than your mother or you or anyone else.
Right.
Just
But
because
if you read
of
any
his anatomy.
any of Paul's letters to very specific communities, it very clearly says that women should not be in ministry. But that was to a very specific community where women were running a little bit rampant with ministry and their abuse of power. So,
yeah,
you know,
but
context is essential.
Context is absolutely essential. And right, again, I served a mission for the Mormon Church. I used to work in ministry. I have taught the Bible to adults for years. If you read the Old Testament and the New Testament and you actually read them, all of it's political. All of it is to fight abuse of power. All of it is those things. Mm-hmm. It is not to dominate one another. And that's what we have turned it into.
We sure have. Boy, Manifest Destiny was a really fun one, wasn't it?
Right. No. Right. Sarcasm, dry sense of humor. Yeah, it's so bizarre to me how we twist the word of God to justify whatever it is that we want to. Like, because you can say, I just did the same thing with the scripture that I picked to quote, that I cherry picked a thing, right? Mm-hmm. But we all do it. And then if you're the one doing it, you just deny it because you want what you want. And
well, right. Because if you don't cherry pick on either side, right? If you don't cherry pick, there's so many contradictions in the Bible because it was written by so many different people.
Yeah. And then translated into so many. There's over. I was having a conversation. Right. I was having this conversation in the morning over coffee with some friends, and it was just like there's over 4,000 different translations of the Bible in English in America alone.
And keep in mind, those are translations of translations of translations of translations.
Yeah. So you can pick the Bible you want that says it how you want and the way you want, because there's a huge difference between you reap what you sow and you harvest what you plant. Mm-hmm. There's a huge difference, especially if you garden or you're from a farming community or anything else, because reaping is not the same as harvesting.
Right.
There's a whole process after you reap. You reap the wheat with a reaper,
and then you thresh it.
Then you have to leave it in the fields to dry, and then you thresh it, and then you winnow it, and then you grind it down to what it is that you're going to be doing with it. There's a whole process afterwards, and planting a thing and harvesting a thing implies now that's done.
Well, right. And I gotta say, the parables of Jesus, we love to turn them into allegories, and they aren't allegories.
No.
So I feel like many of us have been reading the parables wrong.
Right. And then again, I get where people are reading it wrong, because there's a point to where as you go throughout your life and you grow and you have experiences, you're going to understand things differently. Because there's people listening to this right now that are just like, oh, I never thought there was a difference between harvesting and reaping. Mm-hmm. That never occurred to me because you just don't have that information. So I understand that something that you read at 10 or 12 is not going to feel the same way to you as when you read it at 87.
Right.
Right. Or if you're terminally ill, that's going to imply differently to you. But I would look at that as a personal revelation, right? Again,
that's the lens,
spirit
that
of prophecy.
Through. Yeah.
That's for you. That is for your comfort and your growth now. That is not for you to project onto everybody else.
Right.
And it bothers me immensely. And then I like to frequently say to people too, I'm like, I don't know about that one. Jesus told me to love. And if it was important, then Jesus would have said it on the Mount. Yeah. And he didn't say that. Those are not his words. They're not in red. And if it was important, Jesus would have made that very clear.
Right. Every single thing that Jesus says that we have written down and documented as it pertains to him and his ministry, it was all centered around love.
Yeah.
What is the greatest commandment out of all of the commandments that we have?
To love God.
To love God, love your neighbor, and love yourself.
Yeah.
Right? All three of those things. We show our love for God by loving ourselves and loving our neighbor. So,
and we forget the love ourselves part.
A lot of people do.
Yeah. Somebody was just like, do you really think that's loving God when you did that? And my response again, like this is just my patent response. Look, I am struggling to keep the second commandment. And until I do, I don't know how I'm going to begin to keep the first. So let me work on the second commandment to love myself and others. And then when I get that, that's how I love and honor God. And if you can't do the second, there's no way you can do the first.
Right. Well, again, we show our love for God by loving ourselves and our neighbors. When we love ourselves and our neighbors, we are loving God.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need to do anything else to love God except for love one another.
Wow. So I am keeping the first commandment.
You are.
See, this is why, Reverend Gill, you have been my spiritual advisor for years. That's we have to have more and more conversations like this. And then I would really, if you're up for it, and you want to do a show on grief for KFUG, for the community, on all the different forms of grief.
I think I would love to do that. I think that we should bring the chaplain from Sutter Coast in.
Oh, Ben Curry?
Yeah, he's so wonderful, and he's so good at his job.
Yes.
He runs grief groups out of Sutter.
Yeah, right. Working with the hospice community and those types of things. I agree. And then maybe we could not just talk about grief, but talk about historically what grief has looked like, what it looks like today, the grief that we still carry from the inside times, and then culturally what that looks like for not just here within our community and with our Native populations, but globally and in different religious aspects of it, because we do have a quiet community, but a very diverse community.
We do.
With all of those things. So if you need any help making connections with any of those people, let me know. Okay. And I'd be happy to do that.
Thanks.
This has been the most amazing conversation ever, and I appreciate you being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This is great. I'm a word nerd, and I love talking about faith and God, so you can have me anytime. I won't shut up about it.
All right. So you want to do a weekly show, a daily show, a monthly? We have lots of hours to fill, Dana.
I don't know that I have that many hours to give.
Well, you're just a quarter employee, right?
Yeah, that's all. Full time at True North, though.
Dana, you are a beautiful soul and an incredible light in our community, and I appreciate you being here in our inaugural episode of Community Square. Yeah. If you would like us to hold the microphone for you and to be a guest on Community Square, you can email us at communitysquare@kfuglp.org. And then we will schedule that for you. Thanks, Dana, and I look forward to doing those shows with you.
Thank you.